that education is the way we're going to change the world. Just like my statement from Nelson Mandela, it is the answer to stop the discrimination that our huge LGBT community faces on a daily basis. And when I travel the world, when I sit onto a bus or a train or a plane or whatever, sitting next to somebody and I just have a conversation and you help open up the world to just these people, they understand that we're just normal everyday people, and it breaks down those barriers. So that's where I truly believe that each and every single one of us has a power to educate everybody. When we just use our stories, when we use our talks, when we communicate, whether it be through writing, whether it be through television, through events like this, but this is the way we're going to make the world a much, much better place. I really believe that.
Thank you so much for sharing. Oh, and also I did start recording, just wanted to put that out there, because we will be putting this on our website afterwards so that everyone can access it. Yeah. Does anyone else want to answer that question? It's also in the chat, I believe.
Absolutely. To expand on Jessica's point, I just want to say visibility is so important. We can't help or advance any of our goals until we really identify, what the issues are, where they lie, and by having, the more diverse voices that we have in our community speaking up about their experiences, the better. And, we really just hope to be able to have a community that feels safe enough for everybody to be able to speak their truth.
I'll chime in. I was just really excited to see a virtual series of events being offered. I think that's something I hope that continues post-pandemic. It's been a really great way to get more folks to the table and allow more folks to participate. When we're thinking about various forms of disabilities and ways of moving through the world. So that's why I was really excited to participate in this year's panel and this year's virtual events and see everybody here in this space. I'm passionate about my topic, which was about, disability and queerness, because as I kind of touched on, I think both communities and both sets of identities move through the world in very unique ways. Our bodies are read and seen by others because of our identities, for good or for bad. And so I think that intersection of the two is something that we don't talk about a lot. And, I referenced the statistics of the number of folks within our communities that are living with some form of a disability. And I don't see that topic being talked about enough. But then also, I think this last year during the pandemic has really just broken open these conversations about accessibility and different ways to interact with each other and participate in different things. And so I hope that again, just continues on into the future and just continues to grow and expand and in ways that are, unimaginable. So I'm excited to see what we have in store. Thank you all for having me as part of this.
And I'll chime in as well. I'm hearing a lot of points that are really resonating with me from these different panelists talking about, sharing our history and sharing our stories and having that kind of visibility. And it's so important. I gave the kink talk, and there's so much disinformation out there that really paints us in this kind of terrifying light, to be honest. And I really wanted to bring more visibility to that. And I also wanted to really explore the richness of our LGBTQ history. And I saw that in so many of the other talks. And that filled me with a lot of joy, because it is such a rich and beautiful and intricate history. And I just think it's so important to appreciate that.
This is Rob. Part of the reason that I wanted to participate is our churches have done so much wounding. I wanted to help reverse that and show that we're not all the same as Christians. And this was an opportunity to do that. And it was also an opportunity to hear from a lot of other people and for me to learn a lot myself. So thank you.
Hello, everybody. My name is Erika. One of the reasons why I wanted to participate in this panel was mostly to bring light to another side of the spectrum, right? Like we're all mentioning, we all come from different places with different stories, from different cultures, traditions, and things like that. And so as I'm transitioning over to the SLO area, I'm also trying to find a place where I belong, which is quite difficult when you're queer and brown. But I definitely wanted to bring that to the light of the Pride Talks for today. Thank you for having me.
Hello, my name is Lilith. My pronouns are she, hers, and I apologize for not having my camera on. Internet issues have been going on all day, but I really just want to interact with the community a little more. This is a really lovely community, and I really want to be part of it. I also just really want to advocate for youth voices and visibility of youth members of the LGBTQ+ community. We're here and we really want to just make sure that we have accommodations and accessibility as well. And yeah, so thank you so much. And I've really enjoyed hearing everyone's presentations today.
I'm Michelle Call, I use she and her pronouns. I wanted to participate because of young people like Lilith. And I knew I was going to learn so much here today. Someone else has already said that. I definitely have learned a lot. And I chose the topic and I asked Doug to speak with me about the history of Pride, because Pride is so different this year than it's been in the past. Many, many things about it are different. And I thought it would be really good to look back and remind ourselves what we've done before and kind of where we're going. So thank you for the opportunity to do that.
Hi, I'm Kamala, she, her, hers pronouns. I also wanted to speak today to advocate for youth and for parents. So it was a delight to be part of this wonderful, educational, fantastic, celebratory event. So thank you all.
Hi, everyone. Chris, they, them pronouns. I did the talk on language. And while absolutely, I think, you know, the biggest reasons why I wanted to do this was because of engaging with the community, doing what I can to add to the event. But also, I really am I'm a huge believer in storytelling. And I think this platform is absolutely incredible for that. And I love the fact that this was an opportunity given to folks here to tell our stories and tell these stories and share them. So that's one of the reasons why I was so excited about it and why I chose the topic that I did. So.
Thank you all for sharing. I think that was all of our speakers. Our next question is, and I think some of you might have touched on this during your talks as well, but what is the most important thing that you hope people take away from your talk specifically?
This is Doug. I really want to say what an education. What an education. Beautiful. I just can't thank everybody for how, you know, participants, everybody behind the scenes. It's just been amazing that this 2021 has come off the way it is and started off. And I really have to thank everybody involved. And what I want people to take away is that there's a history, and what we don't want to do is forget our history to the point that we revisit that history in a bad way. So you're looking at somebody that's older than anybody else on this call. So I have a lot of history, good, bad, and good, bad, and ugly. And why do I do this work? I question that once in a while. It is for people like myself, but it's really for my young self. What I wouldn't have given for a teacher like Kamala. Tears are coming to my eyes, and I really mean that. I just can't tell you what a difference it would have been to even have the word. I didn't have the word transgender when I was growing up. I didn't feel right to be gay. Of course, in the Catholic Church, nothing was right, but beside the point. And I just I didn't have the word until I was older, and then I didn't have what it took to follow through. There was too many problems to take that on at that time, and so I transitioned late in life, and that was my my course. But I sure would like to see all kids be able to be themselves, whatever they are. And for me, because trans is close to my heart, I hope trans kids have that opportunity, whether it's just to be able to say they're trans and not do anything about it, or just to be able to take it as far as they need to feel in themselves and be comfortable with their own bodies. And I really, whether that has to do with what Alyssa was talking about, I think food was my first drug of choice, and so I want us to remember what it was like to give credence to the people that stood before us, and then let's not make the same mistakes. Let's build on what we've done, remember what we've done, but go on from that. And so that's my biggest thought.
If I can talk, I'm going to follow kind of what Doug said, is to help the younger generation. I deal more personally with the university and college students. I do a lot of the talks here in England with youth, because the United Kingdom allows it a little bit better. They push on education towards the younger generation. And we have some issues. I work with the University of Oxford. I'm on a project right now where it's a medical research not a medical research project, it's a research project, for transgender youth here in the United Kingdom. And it'll be released like later this year, in the beginning of the year. And it's helping to open up the world to the medical community about transgender youth. But that is one of the areas that, like I said, I specifically aim for. My area's expertise is, to the university students. That's my prime motive. And one of the things is I try to normalize us. And that is what I try to do. When I go in there and I speak to students, I was recently, maybe 2 years ago, I was in Israel, and I walk in there, I had about 350 students in front of me. And I said, how many people here know somebody that's transgender? I think 2 hands went up, and one was a professor. And I said, you know what, you would be really, really surprised. And I gave this presentation, and you would be really surprised on how many people that you do know, but because they're scared, because they don't feel comfortable, they don't come out, because they don't know that there are people out there that are accepting. I did it in South Africa. I walk in there, about 500 or 600 students. The professor said, we have a transgender woman from Britain coming here to talk to you. They laughed. I had about 500 or 600 students laughing at me, all this big giant auditorium laughing at me. I gave a presentation. They gave me a standing ovation, and they would not stop asking questions. We extended it for about an hour. When we normalize us, when we just make us typical, normal, everyday humans, it's the breaking down those barriers. And this is the way their mom and dad's the preachers, the policemen, the politicians says we're freaks, we're pedophiles, we're all of this. But when we talk to somebody and just normalize it, this is what I truly believe is one of the greatest ways to break down those barriers. Just like Kamala says, with her school, she helps students understand that. And I believe the younger, the better. And I think that's the path for the future, specifically with the young generation. I'll shut up now.
I think one of the things that I really want people to take away is that we constantly have to be checking our privilege, right? We want the input from everybody in our community. We want to make it a safe place for everybody so that we can share these stories, right? And I know, you know, a lot of people, a lot of white people know kind of what's going on in the world, but that lived experience is so powerful, and I think it's really important for us to, with our language, with the intention behind the spaces that we create, like Bailey had said, not as an afterthought, but as an intention when we're starting out and creating these inclusive spaces. That makes us stronger, because then we're getting the voices of everybody in our community, and that's just, it's the biggest thing for me. You know, talking about eating disorders, I can't just talk about eating disorders from a white woman's point of view. We've seen how it impacts our LGBTQ plus community more, and then, you know, the extra layer on top of that is it impacts our, you know, Black, Indigenous, people of color populations more, people who are at a lower socioeconomic status, people who have disabilities. There's so much level of, you know, we all have the responsibility to acknowledge the level of privilege that we bring into the world, and to make sure that when we go about making programs and creating spaces and, you know, navigating our lives, that we are raising up voices that have been marginalized, and that we are facilitating those safe spaces. So for me, that's the biggest takeaway that I hope people have.
I can follow up to that exactly. So as I sit here, even, right, it's super, it's always a very interesting feeling to be queer in general, and it's always a very interesting identity to navigate as a two-spirit person in a queer community. And so one of the biggest things, like from the talk that I gave, specifically on being two-spirit and how I came to my identity, what I want people to take from that is that we all come to who we are differently, right? Like for me growing up, I knew that I was different. I knew that there was something like very special about me. I didn't grow up in Indigenous traditions. Specifically, I grew up in a very Roman Catholic household. And so for the most part, I just grew up kind of being like, okay, like I'm different and that's fine. I say that in my talk, like I knew that I wasn't like rainbows and unicorns and like in pride parades and things like that. I always felt like, well, like I don't want to be there because that's not who I am, but never to dismiss that is the identity that some people are, right? And so one of the biggest things that I want people to take from that is that we don't all like wear the same like uniform, right? Like we don't all look the same queer, and especially not when we come from this different like traditions, right? And so for me, being a queer Indigenous person, I just want people to be able to look a little bit into my world and to see, you know, that inclusivity, especially like in spaces of LGBTQ plus, is way beyond just like our gender and our sexuality. Because at least for me as an Indigenous queer person, like it's not just about my gender and sex, but about my relationship with Mother Earth and my relationship and commitment that I have to the youth that like come behind me. And so that's what I want people to take away from my small 10-minute piece of my world.
I love the last two comments by the last two speakers, and I'll piggyback off of that and just say that, yeah, I think that our education can never really be, that's what I hope folks got out of my talk, is like topic is our education can never be done based like around, I guess, you know, the members of our communities and the real lived experiences that people have. And then also like ways that we can make things more accessible, but thinking about accessibility in terms of accessibility on along the lines of other aspects of like culture and socioeconomics. That work is never done, and that we're only bettering our community by making things like more accessible and inclusive.
Yeah,
It was hard.
so I agree with all the comments that I said previously, and my talk was about GSAs, and school is just really hard for people, and just finding is like young people, and just finding your identity. It's a huge hardship that most people go through. So just being able to see yourself represented and being able to have a community at school is something that's very important, and just having just normalizing diversity at such a young age will be so impactful for just like the future generations. And that's what I really hope that people take away from my talk.
Mine is a little twofold. Primarily, I really have seen in my outreach education that having these discussions and destigmatizing and giving people good information about kink, even if they aren't interested themselves, I've seen so many people go through that process of learning and come out the other side with carrying less stigma against themselves and carrying less prejudice against themselves about their own sexual orientation or sexual expression or even gender identity. I know lots of people who have gone through that process. And so I wanted to highlight the ways that kink allows us to examine power and consent in a way that can be really freeing for our own personal lives, which is really what I'm hearing echoed here as well. And I think all of these talks touched on, but also, to kind of bring attention to, we have, our community has more to give than just, the scary things that we see in all those terrible, terrible, terrible TV shows.
This is Rob again. I think that little sticker that I kept holding up, you are beautiful, and it's a mirror. So we're saying this not only to ourselves, but we're saying this to everyone else as well. You are beautiful.
For my talk, I think my primary goal was to encourage folks to examine how it is that they learn, how it is that they interpret their experiences and understand their world around them, and the ways that we can, as long as we can recognize our own limitations and the ways in which we can move past those, I think there's a lot of opportunity and potential to really make very profound connections just between human beings themselves. But I think it's important that we recognize what it is we need to move past. So.
Hi, this is Kamala. I'm kind of echoing everything that everybody has already said. And another thing that I wanted out of what I shared in my talk, not only for the young people to recognize that they are beautiful, that there's nothing wrong with them, that they're whole and wonderful and to be celebrated, and also for the adults in their lives to see that those young people are wonderful and beautiful and whole and to be celebrated. And hopefully give a little bit of encouragement to parents out there who might have a hard time with that, and help them, move them closer to that embracing of their child for who they are. So that's, I wanted to get that little spark going at least.
I think that was all of our speakers. Thank you all so much for sharing. Our our final question, it's more of like a talk to your experiences. If you would like to share some of the positive or any of the positive, impactful experiences you've had with the LGBTQ plus community in the Central Coast. And while we have all our speakers share that, I would also like to open the floor up to Q&A. If anyone who is attending would like to put any questions in the chat for any one of our speakers to answer, please go ahead and do that as well. And yeah, speakers, take it away if you would like to share any positive, impactful experiences you've had.
Well, I'm going to jump right in.
I'd like to. No, go ahead, please.
Sorry, thank you. This is my favorite story to share. And so if you've been in a group with me before and this is a repeat for you, sorry. The first event that I went to at the Gala Pride and Diversity Center, other than, support groups for a specific function, was the 2019 senior holiday dinner. And it was a potluck, and I was the youngest person there by a couple of decades. But I had never been in a room where I was able to interact with, people who were my parents or my grandparents' age and actually really connect with those people. I think that one of the things that we often miss in the LGBTQ community are those, are the presence of our elders and as connection with our elders. And I received so many business cards from people who wanted to help me find how to progress my career, how to get connected with all these projects that I was involved in. And everybody was so supportive, and it was an incredible experience to step in and feel connection with a group of elders. It's one of my most precious memories.
I love that. That's fantastic. So for me, probably one of the most positive memories that I have is actually with the Episcopal Church here on the community on the Central Coast. So coming from Houston, my experience of religion was, let's just say, not the most positive. And all that I experienced of religion was violence, shunning, and creating chasms between myself and my family and my community, right? So I came to the Central Coast, and I'd say within 2 weeks, I met Berkeley, who used to be the Episcopal chaplain over at Cal Poly. And then I came back to the Central Coast from Texas for another visit about a month later, and I randomly saw Berkeley again in like a Rite Aid. And I heard my name, Chris, right? And I'm like, who's calling me, right? So then Berkeley comes and he's like, oh, hi, I don't know if you remember me. And so we chat, and then he offers me a job. I'm like, okay. So, so it was very interesting. I ended up attending church seriously for a little while, for the first time ever in my life. And yeah, it really did change my experience of religion in general, just knowing that there was a possibility of affirmation and something other than just tolerance in the religious community, and I still haven't quite made up my mind about the whole thing yet, but it certainly was very life-changing and extremely healing as far as, moving past my experiences in Houston. So I think that's definitely one of the most positive experiences I've had here.
So I think my most positive experience that I've had with the Gala Pride and Diversity Center was the name change from the Gay and Lesbian Association to the Gala Pride and Diversity Center. As you know, as a bisexual person, I feel like there was a lot of exclusion, or I felt like there was a lot of exclusion towards me as a bisexual person, and I know that there was there kind of a complicated history with that, just in the community in general, right? But when Gala held the town hall and asked for members of the community to come speak, I feel like that was like a bright shining light for me. Like, oh my gosh, like they know, they hear it. So it's really for me, I think just the overall, like since then, and overall, I feel like it's just been this kind of, I don't know, just progress. Like there's progress, and it's ever since then for me, like that's just been really positive. That we're really looking out, we're looking into our community, drawing people in, and that's it. That like actual inclusivity and acceptance is huge, and I'm excited to see, you know, all the other good things that are to come.
For me, it's hard to say one instance, so because I chat, but I have experienced being president of the Gay and Lesbian Alliance in my other form, and now I am president of the Gala Pride and Diversity Center in my proper form. And so it's really hard to say which is the more exciting. You know, the first time was opening the first, well, I hadn't known about the Lambda Center, so I thought it was the first one that we ever opened. It was a little bitty place on Charo Street, and it just kept moving, and people kept it going. And the first Pride, and now coming back to an amazing ED, and now a center coordinator, and a board that is really involved. Really appreciate the energy. It's more diverse, but we got, you know, we also have people that are putting themselves, you know, and doing the work. It's hard. People don't realize how much work goes into being a good nonprofit, and you know, if you're doing it right. And so it's just been, there's so many good things about it, but it's hard for me to separate. So I guess I've had two lives, so I get two things, right?
So in 2017, when my child was in middle school, a teacher at Slow High School said that LGBT folks were deserving of death according to the Bible. And this was printed in Expressions, the Slow High School paper. And I was very, very upset by that. And I organized a protest. I put it on Facebook. I organized a protest. I came down to the school, and that memory came up in Facebook the other day. And I looked at the photographs and I was like, oh, I know all those people now. All those people who came out to support me then that I did not know are all people I work with now. And that was before I started at the Pride Center, right? So I just thought that was a pretty cool LGBTQ plus impact moment.
I love that. I'll piggy off that. I think one of my favorite things that I've seen is how like integrated our kind of community has been within various aspects of our community. So I think about a couple events that Michelle and I worked together. We've been on panels with RISE to talk about disability and sexuality and gender with sexual violence. So just thinking about the ways that we're kind of like plugged in everywhere. And we've created this like network of care where we have this presence and we have this visibility and advocacy in all aspects of our community. So folks hopefully are no longer kind of siloed to go to one center to receive kind of the support and affirmation that they are longing for and need. They can see that reflected back at, to themselves in almost every event that they go to. And I think that's really beautiful. It's been beautiful for me to, get to know people and work with people, but then I think it's, again, just helps create that better network of support throughout our community.
I'm going to step in there. Are you done? Okay, me, the loudmouth. I'm going to go back a few years, and I remember when I decided to transition. I was living in the Central Valley. I moved to Santa Maria, and it went back and forth. This is a long story, but I came out and I said, I need to transition. I found a psychologist. My psychologist, through her hairdresser, introduced me to the Gala Center. And I remember my first trip to the Gala Center. It was Trans Tuesday night, and it was a Christmas thing in Christmas of 2009. I was scared shitless. I was in 5-inch stilettos. I had the shortest mini skirt on. I was scared to death. I went to a hotel, got dressed up, and I circled the Gala Center for probably 5 times. And I really said, you know what, I'm not going to do it. And I finally got my nerves up, and I came in there. And wow, there's people like me. This was my first interaction with other transgender people in my life. And it was just like, wow, it opened up the world. I mean, it really, really did. It went from there. And then through that, I met the Unitarian Church. I'm a hardcore atheist. I don't believe in God. And then I found the Unitarian Church, which fully accepted me. They're just like me. I joined the Unitarian. I started doing more and more stuff. Then I met my friend Peggy, who's part of this thing. She's right there, Peggy Jones. Her and I became really good friends. We started Your True Gender, another nonprofit 501c3. We combined with Trans Central Coast. We've had a conference at Cal Poly in 2015, I think. Was it October of 2015? 3-day conference, which was a huge success. And then it just grew and it grew and it grew. And who would ever thunk in a million years, me, this stupid little squeaky kid, now speaking all over the planet, working with Oxford. I'm an ambassador to the Kinsey Institute, which I have some friends for you, Serena, the Kinsey Institute. And you know what I mean? And it's just, you never think in a million years that that would have turned into what has come of it. So I feel like I'm bragging a little bit right now, but I'm just so thrilled. And I think that the Gala Center has a huge, deserves a big pat on the back for really helping open up a lot of people's minds, a lot of people's lives. So thank you.
This is Rob again. One of the things that I appreciate about the Central Coast is, I guess I'll call it the entrepreneurial nature. People see a need and they start something. Erica Andrade started 5 Cities Hope here in the South County, and it is wonderful. I haven't been with them, since we shut down 14 or 15 months ago, but what a beautiful way, especially to be with middle school and high school students. And so she was very entrepreneurial in doing that. Gary Lawson started Rainbow Thumbs, which, is around gardening. And focuses on LGBT folk, and so that we can gather together and share our gardening stories. The first time I saw Jessica speak was at the Lavra. Stephen Lloyd Moffat, started the Lavra, that communal living and all of that education that they do there. He saw an opportunity here on the Central Coast, and he's building something. And the Peace Academy is another group that I'm part of, which is looking to start a K through 12 school that's very progressive, very interfaith. And Noha Kolaha, is starting that. And I probably didn't say her last name correctly, but it's that see an opportunity and start it. And I like that about the Central Coast.
I've had a lot of great memories of inclusivity on the Central Coast. I remember going to one of my first like gala group meetings, and at the time I was identifying as like, straight, cisgendered, and I was so scared. And everyone was so kind, and I loved seeing the progression of, just seeing how they've become so much more accepting of youth members. It's just been so incredible to see that. I remember walking to one of my first Pride festivals and Pride events, and I was so much more confident, and I just felt so included. I just felt like I just felt like I had a community that I could go to and talk to. And it was so incredible, that feeling of happiness and warmth. And I just loved it. It was incredible.
Okay, if everyone has finished sharing, I also want to take a moment to remind everyone attending, feel free to put in any questions you have for the speakers in the chat. And while we're waiting for anyone who has any questions, I'd also like to say that we will be putting all of the talks on the slowpride.com website after today, and also this recording of the live forum. And I just want to give another huge thank you to all of the speakers. Every single one of the talks was truly amazing and inspiring and so informational. And I feel like I've learned so much just from being here today. And I want to thank all of you so much. And then if Serena, if you want to add any, Serena or Michelle, if you want to add any more information about the rest of the Central Coast Pride events for this week, please feel free.
I would like to also thank you, Advaitha, for pulling all this together and organizing it. You have really done a phenomenal job.
Thank you.
Slowpride.com has all the events. We can't wait to see you there.
Yes, for those who maybe joined a little bit later or had to drop in and out, we have a variety of events coming up, some of which are actually related to some of the talks that were given here today. So we are still accepting submissions for Pets of Pride, as was put in the chat. And so we have a photo competition with lots of cool prizes coming up, and that we have categories for cats, dogs, exotic, which can go anywhere from birds to rats to fish, to non-bio pets, which can, be stuffed animals and things like that. Every Saturday, we have a community art project going on in the parking lot of the University Center called Love Notes. And I've had the pleasure of seeing some of the pieces that have already been created, and it is going to be an incredible art installation that will be visible in the Mission Plaza, downtown San Luis Obispo, throughout the month of June. So we will have that display going up for National LGBTQ Pride Month. It's going to be beautiful. And I think that's it for today, but tomorrow I know that I'm really excited for the car caravan. So we're going to be meeting at United Staffing Associates, which is on the other side of downtown as the Gala Pride University Center. And people are meeting there at 6:30. Everything is going to be masked and distanced, and we get to decorate our cars and go through downtown in a loop. And that's going to be our Pride parade for this year. We'll stop by the center where I'm going to be giving out goodies and things like that, and ending at 2 LGBTQ owned restaurants, Skipper's Brew, which is a coffee shop, and Slow Provisions, which is right across the street from them. And they're also going to have some great goodies as well as a fun space to hang out afterwards. And yes, from Michelle in the chat, Skipper's got DJ Sue's and drag queens. Slow Provision has beer and wine and queer night out. Tell your friends. Those are two really awesome places. If you haven't had the chance to check those two places out, they are wonderful. Their food is wonderful. Their staff is lovely and affirming. And they're also really fun places to just go see other LGBTQ people in our community. We have our LGBTQ y más Español Salon May 18th from 5 to 6:15 p.m. We actually have a series of lounges going on throughout the week. Tomorrow's the general LGBTQ lounge hosted by the Gala Pride and Diversity Center. We have our youth lounge on May 19th. May 19th is dedicated to our youth. Our trans lounge is Thursday, May 20th, and Thursday is also dedicated to our trans community. We've got some really cool events there, including a trans night and a non-binary 101. Friday is our, we're going to have a Pride Shabbat, where you can join the Slow Hillel for the first Shabbat of the year in honor of Pride. As well as the Slow Queer History Archive Forum. This is our senior lounge. It will also be including representatives from the Central Coast Queer Archive Project. And you can learn much more about that project at that event. But this is a group that is dedicated to collecting and preserving the queer history of our local Central Coast. And so part of this event is going to be sharing some of those stories, as well as asking people who attend to, consider sharing those stories. One of the things that kept coming up in this panel discussion was how important our history is, especially in terms of, including everybody's stories and getting that full picture. Our history is so important, and our local history, it can be so valuable in its own way. So yes, that will be Friday, May 21st from 5 to 6. Which will promptly be followed by our two 18+ events. We have that conversation with Guy Baldwin, hosted by the Central Coast Kink community, which will be followed by our drag show. This is one of our ticketed events, and it's just going to be amazing. I've had the pleasure of seeing just hints of some of the performances, and it's going to be really exciting. And then the next day on Saturday, we have a live stream concert. That's the Jill Knight concert that Doug and Michelle mentioned in their talk. And there's going to be a lot of other great groups there. There's going to be an a cappella group. There's going to be some other local folk groups and things like that. And that is our other ticketed event, and it starts at 7 p.m. this Saturday. And of course, on Sunday, we have our multi-faith service from 1:30 to 3 p.m. And we're going to have LGBTQ and affirming clergy, lay leaders, and practitioners of a variety of faith and spiritual traditions across the Central Coast, really talking about how they draw strength from our intersectional lives in this multi-faith Pride service. And of course, we'll be finishing out with Pride's Got Talent later that evening from 6:30 to 8:30. We have some really exciting submissions, and that is going to be a fun show. And we do have more events on slowpride.com as well. Please check them all out. We don't have time to run through every one of them. There's a lot of cool stuff happening.
Thank you, Serena. That concludes our Pride Talks for today. And again, thank you to all of our amazing speakers and to all of the attendees for spending the day with us. And that is all, yeah. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you so much.